Steve Moran here, and today I am talking to Patrick Fellers. And well, Patrick, let's start with who you are.
So my name is Patrick Fellers, and I am the Regional Director of Operations for Region 8 for Phoenix Senior Living. And we're located, our home office is located in Roswell, Georgia. And I've been with the company, I'd say probably a little bit over 5 years. Started off as executive director for a memory care community for Phoenix and Fayetteville, Georgia, called Hope Center. And then not long after there, maybe 18 months, a year and a half to 2 years, I transitioned to another community with Phoenix at the Pearl at Dallas, which is another memory care community. And just over the last year and a half, I have been recently promoted to regional director of operations for Phoenix.
So let's talk a little bit about, as you look at overseeing operations in your communities right now, let's talk about sort of the culture challenge and what you're seeing there.
Culture is really the key for the success in any community that you work in. I found that to be evident whether I worked in inner city communities in Chattanooga, Atlanta, or Nashville, or I worked in rural areas in Florida and Tennessee as well. The culture is really inevitably what makes your community a success. So for me, identifying what those culture killers are and what those opportunities are for success has really been important to me and the success that I've had in this industry.
So can you talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you've done to build a culture where people want to come to work every day?
Sure, absolutely, Steve. That's a great question, actually. The keys to success in that, here's funny, it's kind of comical in a way, but the early part in my career when I was traveling and doing turnarounds, I found that it was kind of comical. And I always related to each community as being a small town. And it doesn't matter what small town you go to, there's always a small town attorney, there's a small town bank, you know who your banker is, you know who your doctor is in a small town. The names may change town from town, but you knew who your town drunk was, you knew who your town doctor was. So inevitably, all you really had to do, my keys to success was identifying who those key people were in any town that I worked in, any community that I worked in, and identifying who was going to be the strength, who was going to be culture killers, who was going to actually encourage and embrace the change, who was going to help me fix problems. So throughout my career, I kind of identified a pretty quick way, just internally through, I'd say some through discernment, just identifying passion in people and then using those people to kind of groom what that culture was going to be in the community, and spent more time focused on the good and less time on the bad.
So I love that you're singing my song, you're preaching my sermon. So I know that we talked earlier, but I know that you're using one of the tools you're using is CareQuality to help you really hone in on both the positives and negatives. Can you talk a little bit about how you use it?
Phoenix Senior Living was introduced to CareQuality as a satisfaction tool for us to use with residents and families, and then also using it with our staff and our associates. When it was first introduced to the team, we were a little bit smaller at the time, but I really embraced it, particularly in my first community, which was the Hope Center when I first started with Phoenix. The CareQuality, it's developed over the past few years, so it's getting easier to use, better tools and accessibility to be able to use it. But it gives you great content, and we've kind of designed what we want that CareQuality result to look like or to be. So we'll ask, how likely are you to recommend? How is our housekeeping? How is our communication? How is our care or nursing delivery? How is our dining experience, our activities? We're specific to the individual departments that are also components of what makes Phoenix different. So we want to know the perspective from our residents, our resident families, or potentially even prospects coming into our community, how they view our community, and if they do feel like there's areas to improve on, what those areas may be.
I'm wondering if you have a specific story you could tell me about, maybe a piece of feedback that you got through CareQuality where you go, oh man, I had no idea.
The first thing is I had to learn myself as the ED, I had to learn to not take every satisfaction survey personal. Just like with our associates, families will give feedback based on their background, their upbringing, and their response, right? So I had a particular resident, and I love the resident, but the family was very, very demanding, and they did not frequent their mom on a routine basis. So their satisfaction surveys were based on their perception of what they felt was going on, and it wasn't a reality.
So one of the things that is unique about CareQuality, of course, is they do these as largely as phone surveys versus, paper or email or, text. And do you feel like that phone information really helps you get to the bottom more than it would be if it were in sort of the more traditional ways we see other companies using?
I think making a phone call and getting somebody to answer the phone is really our responsibility to communicate to families. Listen, here's the typical number that you're going to see come across to do a satisfaction survey. When they call, please answer. We want to know what your viewpoints are. So I kind of favor it.
That's just a huge, huge win. Maybe one more question, rather than with residents, you have maybe a story relative to where you learned something terrible or cool with a team member that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten?
Specific to like care and service, and where their mom was in that community was she was receiving care from Margaret, and their feedback was, I know that when Margaret works, I don't have to come visit mom because mom's being taken care of. I know that when it's a weekend that Margaret is scheduled, that all I have to do is call and she's going to give me an update. I know my mom's in good hands. Like, I was hearing 4 or 5 family members actually putting Margaret's name into their satisfaction surveys, which allowed me an opportunity to personally because Margaret was one of those people that didn't boast about her job.
I love this because I think that it really demonstrates the value of a phone conversation. Those are the kinds of things that would be really, really hard to collect in a paper or an electronic fill in the blanks. People aren't likely to sit down and write. And so I just, you're warming my heart with that story. That is just really, really